Yes, I perfectly understand. We should definitely close the deal today. That is actually hilarious. I'll see you at the office.
Minimalism is not about deprivation. That is the thing I need to say before anything else, because the word carries a lot of baggage. It conjures images of people sleeping on mattresses on floors. That is not what this video is about. What minimalism actually means in a financial context has nothing to do with owning less for the sake of owning less. It is about something far more practical and far more powerful. It is about creating a financial margin. The people who always seem to have money, not the extraordinarily rich, not the people inheriting wealth, but the ordinary earners who simply never seem to be financially stressed, who always seem to have a cushion, who say yes to things without checking their balance first. Those people are almost never earning dramatically more than everyone around them. What they are doing differently is following a set of rules about spending, owning, and relating to money that most people were never taught, and that nobody talks about directly. These are the 10 minimalist money rules that separate them from everyone else. And I want to be honest with you up front. Some of these rules will feel obvious until you realize you are not actually following them. Others are going to challenge something you have believed about money for a long time. And one of them, the last one, might be the most practically useful financial idea you encounter this year. Let us get into it. Let's dismantle the coffee myth. Before the rules, I want to address the piece of personal finance advice that has done more damage to genuine financial improvement than almost anything else in the last 20 years. You have heard it. You have probably been told it. Stop buying the coffee. This idea that small daily pleasures are the source of financial difficulty has been repeated so often and so confidently that most people have absorbed it as truth. It is not true. It is not even close to true. And its persistence as advice is actually harmful because it directs people's attention toward the wrong category of spending entirely, which means the right category never gets addressed. Sophia earns $68,000 a year. She buys a coffee most mornings on her way to work. 5 days a week, 50 weeks a year, $5 a time. She spends $1,250 a year on coffee. If she eliminated that entirely and invested every dollar at a 7% annual return for 30 years, she would have approximately $118,000. That is real money. The problem is that Sophia has a car payment of $620 a month she took on because the car she wanted required it. Over the same 30-year period, the cost of that car payment, the payment itself, the higher insurance, the interest, exceeds $350,000 in direct costs and opportunity cost combined. The coffee is not Sophia's financial problem. She is just looking in the wrong place, because the coffee is visible and the car feels inevitable. The minimalist money rules are not about the coffee. They are about the category of spending that actually determines your financial trajectory, the large, recurring, normalized expenses that feel like non-negotiable facts of life, but are actually choices. Each of the 10 rules addresses a different dimension of that category. Let us go through them. Now, let's get into the 10 rules. Rule 1. Cost per use thinking. Most people evaluate the cost of a purchase by looking at its price tag. The first minimalist money rule replaces that habit with a completely different question. Not how much does this cost, but how much does each use of this cost? The calculation is simple. Take the price of the item and divide it by the number of times you will realistically use it in its lifetime. A $300 jacket that you wear twice a week for 5 years costs you approximately 58 cents per use. A $60 jacket you wear 4 times and stop wearing because you never really liked it costs $15 per use. The expensive jacket was the cheaper purchase. The cheap jacket was the expensive one. This thinking does not lead to buying expensive things. It leads to buying fewer things and buying them deliberately. It makes you ask, before any significant purchase, whether you will actually use this enough for the cost per use to be reasonable. Most impulse purchases fail this test immediately. Most considered purchases, the ones that serve a genuine recurring purpose in your life, pass it easily. Cost per use thinking does not make spending more complicated. It makes it more honest. Rule 2. The one-in, one-out principle. This is the rule that controls the accumulation of things over time, which is the mechanism that produces lifestyle maintenance costs. The rule is exactly what it sounds like. When something new comes in, something old goes out. You buy a new pair of shoes, an old pair leaves. You get a new kitchen appliance, an old one goes. You subscribe to a new streaming service, an existing one gets canceled. The categories do not have to match perfectly, but the principle maintains a roughly constant footprint of owned things that demand ongoing attention: storage, insurance, maintenance, and emotional energy. The financial relevance of this rule is not obvious until you think about what possessions actually cost beyond their purchase price. Things break and need repair. Things need to be stored in bigger homes. Things get insured. Things need to be maintained. Things become psychologically burdensome. Every item you own is carrying a hidden ongoing cost that is not on any price tag. The one-in, one-out principle caps the accumulation of that hidden cost at a constant level, rather than letting it grow indefinitely with every purchase. People who follow this rule consistently tend to live in smaller spaces than their income would suggest they need, drive simpler cars than their income would suggest they can afford, and have significantly lower monthly overhead than peers earning the same amount. That gap between income and overhead is financial margin. Financial margin is freedom. Rule 3. The car rule. The car is where most people make their single largest financial mistake outside of housing, and they make it repeatedly throughout their adult lives without ever fully accounting for what it costs them. Two neighbors, David and Kevin, both earn $75,000 a year. David drives a 4-year-old Honda he paid cash for after saving for 18 months. His monthly car costs are insurance and maintenance, roughly $180 a month total. Kevin drives a new SUV he financed. His monthly costs are the payment, higher insurance, and maintenance, roughly $870 a month. The difference between them is $690 a month. Over 10 years, that difference, invested at a modest 7% return, becomes approximately $114,000. David's car looks ordinary. Kevin's car looks successful. But David is building wealth at a rate Kevin's car payment is actively preventing. The minimalist car rule is not, drive the cheapest possible car. It is, never let your car consume more than 15% of your take-home income across all its costs combined: payment, insurance, fuel, and maintenance. Most people who follow this rule end up buying reliable used cars with cash or with minimal financing, not because they cannot afford more, but because they understand what affording more actually costs them in the long run. The car is the clearest example of the principle underlying all 10 of these rules. The most significant financial decisions look ordinary and boring from the outside. They do not announce themselves. They accumulate silently. Rule 4. Spending friction systems. Every financial environment today is engineered to make spending as effortless as possible. One-click checkout, saved card details, same-day delivery, buy now, pay later. The entire retail and technology ecosystem has systematically removed every friction point between the spending impulse and the completed purchase. And the result is a world in which buying things has never been easier and the average person has never found it harder to keep money. Spending friction systems push back deliberately against this. They are small, intentional barriers you create between yourself and easy spending. Removing saved card details from shopping sites so you have to find the physical card, type the number, type the expiry date, type the security code. Leaving your wallet at home on days you know you tend to browse. Unsubscribing from promotional emails entirely. Deleting shopping apps from your phone and requiring yourself to open a browser if you want to make a purchase. Installing a browser extension that replaces prices with the number of hours worked it would take to earn that amount. None of these barriers make purchasing impossible. They make it slightly more deliberate. And slightly more deliberate is enough. Because most problematic spending is not driven by genuine desire. It is driven by convenience and the ambient presence of purchasing options. A 30-second delay between impulse and action is enough to interrupt most impulse purchases. Spending friction systems create that delay on purpose and at scale. Rule 5. The 72-hour rule for non-essential purchases. For any non-essential purchase above a threshold you set for yourself, most people find that somewhere between $50 and $100 works well. You wait 72 hours before completing the purchase. You add it to a cart or a wish list, you set a reminder for 3 days later, and you come back to it. The research on purchasing decisions is consistent on this point. A significant proportion of the purchases people regret most were made within minutes or hours of first encountering the item. The emotional pull of novelty, the manufactured urgency of limited-time offers, the dopamine response of adding something to a cart. These are all at their strongest in the first hour of encountering a potential purchase and measurably weaker 72 hours later. What happens when you return to the item 3 days later falls into one of three categories. Either you have completely forgotten about it, which is useful information about how strong the desire actually was, or you return to it, look at it, and the impulse has quietly passed, and you close the tab without much feeling either way. Or you return to it and still genuinely want it and can give a real reason why, in which case you buy it without guilt because you have made a considered decision rather than a reflexive one. The 72-hour rule does not prevent spending, it prevents regret. The difference is larger than it sounds. Rule 6. The replacement test. Before buying anything new in a category where you already own something functional, ask one question. Is what I currently own broken, worn out, or genuinely insufficient for what I need it to do? If the answer is no, the purchase you are considering is not a replacement. It is an upgrade, and upgrades have a different financial logic from replacements. A replacement is a necessity. An upgrade is a choice. Sometimes a good one, sometimes not, but always a choice that should be made consciously rather than automatically. Raymond has a laptop that works perfectly well for everything he uses a laptop for. It is 3 years old. A newer model comes out with a better screen and a faster processor. He does not edit video. He does not run software that taxes his current machine. The new laptop would be marginally better at the things he does every day, and significantly better at things he never does. He considers buying it for 2 weeks. Then he applies the replacement test. Is his current laptop broken, worn out, or insufficient? The answer to all three is no. He does not buy the new one. The $1,400 he would have spent stays in his account. 3 years later, when his current laptop finally starts showing its age and the answer to the replacement test genuinely becomes yes, he buys the updated version. He has never felt he missed anything in the interim. The replacement test sounds almost too simple to be a rule worth naming, but applied consistently across every category of spending: clothing, technology, furniture, kitchen items, sports equipment. It produces a meaningfully different pattern of purchasing from the one most people follow by default, which is buying new things when they become appealing rather than when they become necessary. Rule 7. Maintenance over replacement. There is a financial disposition that wealthy people across income levels tend to share that is almost never discussed. They take care of things. They service the car on schedule. They resole the shoes instead of replacing them. They repair the appliance instead of discarding it. They maintain the home instead of waiting for things to fail catastrophically. The financial case for this is not sentimental. It is mathematical. The ongoing cost of maintaining a functional item is almost always lower than the cost of replacing it before its useful life is exhausted. A $120 annual service on a car can prevent a $2,000 repair. A $40 shoe resoling extends the life of a $300 pair of shoes by 2 or 3 years. A $200 appliance repair avoids a $900 replacement. Across a lifetime of owned items, the maintenance over replacement disposition produces savings that are genuinely substantial without requiring any reduction in quality of life. This rule also changes your relationship with the things you own. When you maintain something carefully, you use it more fully and more satisfyingly. You extract more value from each purchase. And extracting more value from existing purchases is the other side of the same coin as buying less. Both produce more financial margin from the same income. Rule 8. The invisible spending audit. Once every 3 months, go through every recurring charge leaving your account and ask of each one, do I use this enough to justify keeping it? And would I sign up for it today if I encountered it for the first time? This audit consistently surfaces 3 categories of charges. The first is services you actively use and genuinely value. These stay without guilt. The second is services you use occasionally and could replace with a lower-cost alternative. These are worth addressing. The third, and the most financially significant, is services you have completely forgotten about. Streaming platforms from a free trial that converted to paid, a news subscription from 2 years ago, a fitness app you downloaded in January, a tool you used for one project. These invisible charges are deducted automatically every month, have no visible impact on your daily life, and collectively can represent a substantial monthly outflow that is entirely recoverable. The average person, when they conduct this audit for the first time, finds between $40 and $150 a month in recurring charges they either forgot they had or no longer find worth the cost. That is between $480 and $1,800 a year, recovered in one afternoon of attention without changing a single thing about how you actually live. The invisible spending audit is the simplest money rule on this list, and arguably the one with the most immediate return on the time it takes. Rule 9: Lifestyle optionality. Over lifestyle display. There are two fundamentally different things money can buy. It can buy visible things: the car, the apartment, the clothes, the restaurants, the holidays, things that signal your financial position to the people around you. Or it can buy optionality, the ability to say no to things you do not want to do, to weather financial difficulty without catastrophe, to take an opportunity when it appears without being held back by the lack of runway. Most people, operating inside a culture that makes spending visible and saving invisible, gradually allocate their income almost entirely toward the first category. A car signals something, the apartment signals something, the clothes signal something, the financial cushion, the investments, the savings, these are invisible. They do not signal anything to the people in the parking lot, or the restaurant, or the office. The minimalist money rule here is a reorientation of what you are actually trying to purchase with your income, not display, optionality. The financial breathing room that means you can leave a job that is not working. That means an unexpected expense is an inconvenience rather than a crisis. That means you can say yes to the things that actually matter to you without having to say no for financial reasons. That kind of wealth is entirely invisible from the outside, and it is the only kind that changes how your life actually feels from the inside. Rule 10: Define enough. This is the rule that makes all the others sustainable, and it is the hardest one to implement because it requires a decision that the culture around you will actively resist. The question is, what is enough for you? Not what is possible. Not what you could eventually afford if you kept climbing. Not what the people around you seem to have settled on. What is the level of material life at which you would feel genuinely comfortable and genuinely satisfied? What is the income level, the home size, the car, the wardrobe, the annual holiday that you would describe, if you were being honest with yourself, as enough? Most people have never answered this question. The default in the absence of a definition of enough is more. More is always the answer because the goalpost moves. The apartment that felt aspirational becomes the baseline. The car that felt like a treat becomes the minimum standard. The holiday that felt like a reward becomes the expected annual event. And the income that was supposed to be enough keeps turning out to be just short of enough, regardless of how much it grows, because enough was never defined. The people who always seem to have money are not always the people who earned the most. They are disproportionately the people who decided at some point what enough looked like for them, and then stopped letting that definition move. Recapping everything we have said. 10 rules. Let me run through them quickly so you have them in one place. 1. Evaluate purchases by cost per use, not by price tag. 2. One thing in, one thing out. Keep your ownership footprint constant. 3. Apply the car rule. Total car costs should not exceed 15% of take-home income. 4. Build spending friction deliberately. Make impulsive purchasing slightly harder. 5. Wait 72 hours before completing any non-essential purchase above your threshold. 6. Only replace things that are genuinely broken, worn out, or insufficient. 7. Maintain what you own rather than waiting to replace it. 8. Run an invisible spending audit every 3 months and cut what is not earning its cost. 9. Allocate your income toward financial optionality rather than financial display. And 10. Define what enough looks like for you, specifically and honestly, and then let that definition stay stable. None of these rules requires you to earn more. None of them requires significant sacrifice. What they require is a consistent, deliberate relationship with money that is slightly different from the one most people operate on by default. Applied together, across months and years, they produce the quiet financial stability that looks from the outside like luck, but is actually a set of decisions made so consistently they have become invisible. The next video on this channel covers something that most people believe is a personality trait rather than a learnable skill: The specific reason why people who earn good money still feel broke at the end of every month, even after they have tried budgeting, tried cutting back, and tried every common piece of financial advice. It is a structural explanation, not a moral one, and it fundamentally changes how you look at your own financial situation. That video is already up. Subscribe to Capital Notes if this video gave you something useful to think about. Every video on this channel is part of the same connected sequence. Each one builds on the last. None of them stand alone as isolated tips. That is the whole point. See you in the next one.